Back to the sports court. We're back live in Houston, Texas on a Tuesday. Small hiccup in the stream as Google crashed on us, but we are back.
Just like last week.
Hey, same thing happened last week, but we had already got into a lot of the meat that was on that bone. This time we're just getting started, so we're going to jump right back into things. We were talking about...
But that's what happens when you go live, Eddie.
Hey, it's like flying by the seat of your pants, man. You're on a wing and a prayer, and you got to hope everything holds up. But look, we're not going to let them knock us down. We're going to stand right back up and keep going.
We're not recording it for you. We're going live.
That's right. So we were talking about Tyler Huntley, the Baltimore Ravens, going for two, trying to beat the great Aaron Rodgers. Was that the right decision? Might not have been the right play call, according to Greg, but it definitely was the right decision to try to take them down there. Now, hey, I want to talk about Huntley real quick.
Okay.
This is a guy undrafted. Baltimore picks him up undrafted. He gets the opportunity to play. And ever since I've seen him fill in for Lamar Jackson, ever since the first game he filled in for him, he looks like a great value version of Lamar Jackson, like something you might get on the clearance rack. It's not Lamar Jackson,
yeah,
but it damn sure is pretty
like,
damn close.
Yeah.
Like,
who is this guy? Look at this
a legitimate threat with his legs to run. I mean, there's highlight film out there right now of him making 10, if not 11 guys on the defense miss in one run.
He's good.
He flashes arm strength, and he doesn't appear to be inaccurate. He doesn't turn the football over. Greg, why didn't this guy get drafted?
Hey, you know what? I'm trying to figure out the same thing because I kept saying to myself, who is Tyler Huntley? But I like what I'm seeing. I like what I'm seeing from this guy. And again, like you said, you don't have Lamar Jackson, but you have a guy that's similar. And it's almost like I know Lamar's over there cheering, and trust me, his spot on that team is secure. He's a franchise quarterback. But I know Lamar is saying to himself, like, wow, I didn't know this guy was this good. And, yeah, that's going to help us. But I have to get back on the field. I have to get back on the field ASAP because this guy is playing like he may not relinquish that starting job, or he's not going to do it easily. I say that. But we all know Lamar Jackson, when he comes back, he's a starter on that football team. But Huntley, he's shown to be very athletic, like you said. He's making all the right throws. He's running at the right times, keeping his eyes downfield, making the right throws. But he knows when to utilize his legs. He knows when to run, and he's making people miss. And he's playing with that confidence. He's playing with that bravado, that moxie, and it's very encouraging. I mean, the team, again, he had a chance to win that game right there if, in my opinion, it just would have been a different play call. Or maybe it just wasn't executed the right way. But I thought they cut off half of the field. But I do agree with that decision to go for it right there. But as far as Huntley,
look at it either way.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as him, as far as his talents, there's no question about his talents whatsoever. Now, we were talking about Green Bay, of course. Again, I still think Green Bay is beatable because of their defense. And even though their defense is better and they have some guys that can make plays, and they're still going to get a top-notch cornerback back, so that's going to help as well here pretty soon. But we were talking about how Aaron Rodgers, how the greatness of Aaron Rodgers just always has his teammates believing that they're in the ball game. And
other teams making decisions based on the fact that guy, like we mentioned before we got cut off, that guy, if he touches the football in overtime, you might not get it.
Yes,
so you have to operate differently as a team, as a head coach. If you're John Harbaugh, you get in that situation and you go for two. Now, before we get too far away from Tyler Huntley talking about the Packers, how bad did the NFL whiff on this guy? How did they whiff, Greg? And what I really want to ask you, was he just a guy that slipped through the cracks, or is there a problem, in your opinion, with the way maybe some guys are evaluating quarterbacks at that level for a guy who clearly, let's see, he was the leading passer for the Ravens and the leading rusher, 2 touchdowns on the ground and 2 touchdowns through the air.
Sometimes
is it a problem with the guys making the decisions on evaluating these guys, or did he genuinely just slip through the cracks at Utah?
I think he probably just slipped through the cracks. I mean, obviously, and then a lot of times like that, when a lot of these scouts and a lot of these GMs, when they watch these guys at certain schools, if they're not a household name, they start viewing them as playing a different position other than quarterback. And they probably saw some skills at Utah. They probably saw a skill set, but they probably started looking at him in the same vein as they were looking at Lamar Jackson when he was a Heisman Trophy winner. at Louisville, and they were asking him to run routes at wide receiver at the combine, and he's like, no, I'm a quarterback. So it's probably a situation where they probably just did not envision his skill set transferring. Now, I mean, again, I had never heard of the guy, so I don't know what his situation was as far as his character and how he was off the field. A lot of times, too, when they go recruit these guys and scout these guys at these colleges, a lot of times, too, if the coaches don't have glowing endorsements about the person, and then that also drops them too on the totem pole as well. So I don't know if his coaches didn't have any good things to say about him, or if he had character issues, or if it was just a situation where they didn't see that he had the skill set to transfer to the NFL, even though you know at this point that you need guys that can make plays with their legs and guys that have strong arms. Maybe he just didn't have that success at Utah. Sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes these guys, once they get a chance and once they get an opportunity, even though he probably didn't have the gaudy numbers, again, I don't know what he did at Utah, I'll be honest, but even though they probably don't have the gaudy numbers, sometimes when they get into another environment with a different offense coordinator or different players around them, and they just get into another environment, sometimes their talents really blossom and really come to the forefront. And sometimes all people are looking for is that opportunity. And he seems like he's one of those guys that's just seizing the moment, seizing the opportunity. And so, of course, he's probably not in the Ravens' future as starting quarterback, but he's making it hard on the Ravens as far as like, okay, should we get rid of this guy because we know Lamar can get injured, we know his style, or should we keep this guy, or should we get some value for him and improve our football team? Of course, they have J.K. Dobbins coming back next year as well, so their running game will be bolstered, and that will help out. But he's now playing like a guy that you can probably get some compensation for. That's how good he's looking.
I mean, that's a great point, and it does put the Ravens in a position where they have to, weigh those types of questions amongst themselves. But if you ask me, I think they desperately need to keep him in the fold, especially with, I wouldn't call Lamar Jackson fragile, but just his nature of how he plays
absolutely
always leaves him at risk of being out in a big game, even if it is just for the rest of the game. Concussion protocol, whatever you have it or whatever it is, having Huntley to come in is invaluable for this Baltimore Ravens team. Did the NFL miss on Huntley's talent? Yeah, probably, but I think it's important to remember.
Well, the Ravens didn't miss on him.
No, even though as far as wasting a draft pick, but that's just the Ravens being smart and realizing here's a guy who fits into a system that before we drafted Lamar Jackson and made him our franchise quarterback didn't exist in the NFL. It just was non-existent. That type of system. I mean, it took the Ravens a few years to sort of polish it and fine-tune it and get it to what it is today. But there was no place for that type of quarterback. Apparently, if you ask other NFL scouts or you look around other NFL rosters, those were just nuanced guys that would come in for a package here and there, get you out of a jam, maybe play well one game, two games, but never really be there to stay. Lamar Jackson changed that, and with this team being the team that built themselves around Lamar Jackson and around that style of offense that is new to the NFL, Tyler Huntley, they were able to handpick him as a free agent and get him into the fold where he fits perfectly. And just like you mentioned, his talents were able to blossom in an environment that is indicative of success for that type of quarterback.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I think it's just a match made in heaven. Is there value there? Maybe, if the value is in a Ravens coach goes in and is a coach or offensive coordinator somewhere
like
else,
if it's the right system,
or if somebody else adopts that same style of system, which we've seen, like it has to be run a certain way, because if you're too run heavy or too run centric, as I'll call it, you'll end up with an injured quarterback. You'll end up with a dud playoff game. You'll have teams figure you out at the wrong time of the season. And if you're trying to win championships, obviously that's not a good thing.
So
right now, I think the best thing for the Ravens to do is to keep him on the roster as long as they can. And until they can't hold him back anymore, or until somebody wants him so bad that they can offer you something to where it's worth for you to give him up, then I think you keep him right where he's at and let him keep succeeding in a backup role. And eventually, who knows?
At least for another year.
Yeah, things change, times change. You never know. Quarterback could go down at any time. Tyler Huntley is an invaluable piece to the Baltimore Ravens, who are fighting and clawing their way for a playoff spot. That it's a tight race when we look at the AFC and NFC playoff picture. But in the AFC playoff picture, Ravens are on the outside looking in.
Yeah, they are.
They're on the bubble right now. And so to me, You got to have
eighth seed right
every
now.
little bit of depth helps.
Absolutely, man. And they already lost their running game, like I mentioned, J.K. Dobbins. So again, they've lost the last 4 games, but I think a total of 4 points, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, it's a situation right now with the Ravens. Like and of course, there's no moral victories. And one thing I like about John Harbaugh, what he did, if you listen to the soundbite that they had leading up to that 2-point conversion attempt, he asked his players, hey, what do you think I should do right here? You guys want to go for it? So they were like, yeah, let's go. Let's end it right here. So I like the fact now, obviously, he's the guy that's going to make the final decision, but I like the fact that he was able to take input from his players, and he didn't have enough pride to where he did not want to include them in that decision, where he was like, well, I'm the head coach. I mean, I like that. I like that. He kept it real right there, and he took a chance, and it didn't happen. He took a chance a week before that, and it didn't happen. But he actually asked a few of his players, what do you guys want to do? You want to kick the extra point, or you want to go for it? They were like, let's go for the 2-point conversion. So, hey, he laid it all out there on the line like that. And again, they're out of the playoff spot right now. And I think, and I don't want to say that Harbaugh is giving up on the season, but I still think with the way that they're competing, and if they finish out the season strong, even if they don't make the playoffs, I still think with all that has happened, with Lamar Jackson missing time, with them having a backup quarterback in there, of course, with the injuries at running back, like I spoke of, J.K. Dobbins and those guys and certain things, I think he would just love to get out of this season as is, look at the bright side of things, look at the big picture, realizing he has J.K. Dobbins coming back next season, a full complement of Lamar Jackson. Maybe the COVID situation will be more under control. And not that he's looking for any more victories, but I think Harbaugh would still look at this season, even though they don't make the playoffs, as somewhat of a success, so to speak. And then the revelation of Tyler Huntley as well. So I think he's happy with where he is and what he's doing as a coach. He's just realizing that he's had some unfortunate situations as of late, and them going for it a couple of times and not getting those 2-point conversions didn't help. But I think he's okay with where he is and how the team is actually playing, all things being considered. Now, speaking of playoffs real quick, now what do you think real quick before we get into the Texans and Jacksonville? I want to get your take on prime time Deion Sanders tearing it up down there at Jackson State, even though they lost that SWAC championship. But what he was able to do his first year, like I was saying before the season, Florida State may want. I mean, I like the fact that he's getting that valuable experience right there. And of course, if you're someone from the SWAC, or if you're someone who really wants to see Deion stay at a black school, and eventually Deion is going to leave Jackson State. Now he's probably there for another year. He already interviewed for the TCU position, but that's why I said Florida State probably should have hired him when he was trying to get hired by Florida State. But I think this experience really helps him as well, like you alluded to when we talked about that a long time ago. But what do you think about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers real quick? What do you think about them? Now they're bringing back Antonio Brown into the fold. What do you think? Like I've said, it's all about winning. Bruce Arians said as much.
They're also bringing in Le'Veon Bell. I think that's the latest
Are they
report
really?
to come out today that Tampa Bay is going to sign Le'Veon Bell.
Okay.
It's
yeah, because of hamstring, the hamstring for Fournette.
It's been it was a rough week for Brady and company. I don't think they expected the Saints to play as well against them as they did. And as far as
defense always brings it.
Yeah, that is a tough defense, but we have seen some teams get the better of them in the running
for some
game.
reason against Tampa and Brady, they just. But go ahead.
But you when you're the champ, you've got a target on your back.
Absolutely.
And definitely.
Absolutely.
You've got a team with a young quarterback that's trying to prove himself, and Taysom Hill, a guy who a lot of people aren't given a chance to. I'm really not giving him a chance to be successful in the long term.
Me
but
either.
certainly Sean Payton is at the grindstone.
At
and
that
in the
position.
lab. He's figuring out what they have to do to muster up as much offense as they can and keep defenses on their heels.
Right,
and they did a good job against Tampa Bay. I think bringing back Brown is going to help. But I'd be a little bit concerned.
What do you think about what Arians said when they asked him about the perception of the team? Because originally, remember when they assigned you, remember we had that barbecue bet, and I got my dirty rice and sausage and ribs and all this and that. But remember we were talking about that in the past before they actually signed him. And I was like, well, it's all about if they can help him win. If he can help them win in that regard, if he can help them win, that's what's going to matter at the end of the day. And, of course, Bruce Arians, of course, they asked him about that because he said one strike and he's out. Now, that's the one strike right there, right there. But now, of course, he reneged on that, and he said he doesn't give a blank, bleepity bleep. He doesn't give a bleepity bleep what they think. He's doing what's best for the team. And he's just being honest right there. And that's been my point all along. Now, of course, now they realize they need Antonio Brown more than ever because of Chris Godwin. But as long as Tom Brady wants Antonio Brown on that team, because other than the fake vaccination card, which is wrong, definitely wrong, he's paid his dues for it. They say he's been a model citizen up to that point, from what I understand. So I think that had a lot to do with it as well. And the fact that he's going to give him a legitimate deep threat and a guy that can be a possession receiver as well. He's Antonio Brown, a Hall of Fame caliber receiver. So you bring him back into the fold, especially when you have Tom Brady at this point, who's Tom Brady is probably saying, they probably say, Tom, hey, do you want to bring him back? Heck yeah, I want to bring him back. There it is. So I think he's going to help them in that regard, but the loss of Chris Godwin really hurts. But
yeah, AB
will be back next week.
There should be some concern, the fact that they didn't want AB there all